You are listening to Bedtime's sleepy historian. It is late. The room around you has gone still. Somewhere outside, the faint sound of wind passes over sleeping rooftops. Take a slow breath in, and let your thoughts drift backward, far, far beyond your own lifetime. We are traveling tonight to the city of Rome, in the year 37 C. The empire has never seemed larger, nor its people more confident in their dominion. Marble glitters beneath Mediterranean sunlight. Senators debate in the forum, soldiers polish their armor in distant outposts, and merchants shout across the Tiber's bridges. Rome is alive, loud, scented with sweat and oil and ambition. But behind the bustle of the streets rises another Rome, quieter and more dangerous. The imperial palace crowns the Palatine Hill like a white flame. Its walls hold the pulse of a world where laughter can be a weapon and silence a kind of currency. Within those rooms walks the young emperor, Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, whom history remembers as Caligula. As a boy, he was adored by the legions. His father, Germanicus, had carried him among the soldiers, dressing him in miniature armor, tiny leather boots, the Caligulae, from which his nickname was born. They called him Caligula, Little Boots, a term of affection that would one day curdle into fear. When he ascended the throne, the people cheered. Rome believed it had found a kind ruler at last, a bridge between the memory of Augustus and the chaos of Tiberius. For a few months, joy reigned. The new emperor paid debts, released prisoners, and offered generous games to the populace. His face appeared on coins beside the word pietas, duty. Yet something darker stirred behind his eyes. The palace, in those early days, was a maze of ceremony. Marble halls veined like living stone, frescoed ceilings where painted gods watched from above, and corridors lined with statues so lifelike they seemed to breathe. In the evenings, torches flickered along the walls, their smoke mixing with perfume. The air itself was heavy, as though weighed by too many secrets. Servants moved silently between chambers, carrying trays of figs, wine, and wax tablets. Each footstep was measured, each glance downward. In the palace, even breathing too loudly could be a form of betrayal. Behind every curtain, someone listened. Behind every smile, someone remembered. Caligula began to change. The historians tell us that an illness struck him, perhaps fever, perhaps madness. When he recovered, the man who rose from his bed was not the one who had lain down. He saw plots in friendly faces, rebellion in casual words. Power, once gentle in his hands, turned inward like a blade. Imagine walking those marble corridors now. The candles tremble in their holders. Far away, a musician plucks a slow note on a lyre, its echo bending through open doors. A servant kneels to polish the emperor's sandals, not daring to lift her eyes. Somewhere nearby, a senator whispers an oath he may not survive. The empire outside still thrives. Bread is baked, temples glow with offerings, and ships bring grain from Alexandria. Yet within these walls, the pulse of Rome grows feverish. The emperor, sleepless, wanders from room to room, speaking to statues, ordering sudden feasts, demanding impossible loyalty. There are dinners that begin in laughter and end in tears. There are gifts of gold given in the morning, and executions before nightfall. The palace becomes a stage where every actor must smile until the curtain falls. And beneath it all, beneath the silk cushions, the gilt cups, the endless games, lies the silent machinery of servitude. Every luxury rests upon another person's labor. Every secret desire is carried out by hands that cannot refuse. As the night deepens, imagine the city below the hill quieting. Oil lamps burn low, and even the guards lean on their spears, drowsing. But the palace remains awake, humming faintly with footsteps and hushed orders. In this stillness, something unseen begins to stir, the shadow of a truth Rome seldom acknowledged, that its grandeur, its power, and its pleasures were all built upon the uncounted lives of those who could never say no. And so, as one torch guttered out along the marble hall, another flared to life, its flame licking the air like a warning. The empire dreamed of eternity, but eternity had a cost. The palace stands, and within it, the sound of breathing continues, measured, hidden, necessary. The night in Rome is long. The hour grows late in Rome. Beyond the palace gates, the city sleeps in patches. Merchants curl beneath their stalls, cats threading between amphorae, the slow drip of fountains filling marble basins. But up here, on the Palatine Hill, the night never quite settles. The palace itself breathes. Listen closely, and you can almost hear it, the faint creak of a door, the whisper of linen against stone, the sigh of someone rising before dawn's first light. In these halls, the whispers are constant, some words of command, others of caution. The sound never stops, because silence, here, can be mistaken for plotting. The palace is a labyrinth of light and shadow. There are grand corridors, wide enough for chariots to pass, and narrow servant passages where only candlelight fits. The walls are painted with scenes of triumph, emperors crowned by gods, armies in perfect rows, oceans tamed beneath Roman prows. Yet beneath those painted glories lie smaller rooms, windowless, airless, filled with the quiet hum of unseen labor. The servants move like ghosts. They know every hidden staircase, every door that opens with a particular twist of the wrist. They rise before the emperor does and vanish only after he sleeps, if he sleeps at all. Their hands set the golden tables, pour the wine, arrange the garlands. When Caligula walks by, they lower their eyes and bow so deeply that their spines ache. It is safer that way. The palace guards watch them, too. Every slave, every messenger, every child who polishes a statue or tends the oil lamps, each is part of an invisible network that keeps this vast machine alive. Caligula's Rome is not built of marble alone, but of fear and familiarity, of routine so constant that it becomes a kind of prayer. By day, the sounds are grand, trumpets at the gates, the thunder of approaching hooves, heralds announcing decrees. But by night it's different. The palace hums in another key, the rustle of silk as someone hurries to obey, the clink of jewelry hastily removed, the muffled sob of someone who's been caught in a lie. Not all whispers are words. Some are gestures, a servant's hand trembling as she pours wine, a quick glance shared in mourning. Within these walls, messages travel faster than any courier. A lifted eyebrow can mean life or death. In a side chamber, the emperor's favorites dine apart. Perfume thickens the air, mingling with roasted fruit and honey. The laughter is too loud, the smiles too perfect. Caligula's mood changes with the hour. Those who please him tonight may find themselves condemned by dawn. So the laughter continues, sharp and nervous, as if mirth itself could ward off danger. Meanwhile, in the servants' quarters below, someone hums a tune to keep their courage. A girl no older than 16 folds linens for the emperor's bed, whispering the same prayer her mother whispered before her. She has not seen daylight in weeks, but she remembers its color. She works by lamplight until her eyes sting, because idleness invites notice, and notice is never kind. Among the palace slaves are many kinds. Some are born in Roman households, trained from childhood to serve, others are captives, Greeks, Syrians, Africans, each carrying memories of homes now lost to the empire's appetite. Their tongues mingle in the dark, a soft blend of languages forming its own hidden music. They speak in fragments, warnings disguised as small talk. "He didn't eat today," one murmurs, meaning the emperor's temper is rising. "He laughed at breakfast," another says, meaning perhaps the evening will pass without punishment. The whispers keep them alive. Every empire has its pulse, and this palace is Rome's. If you follow the rhythm closely, you begin to understand. The emperor may rule in name, but it is these invisible lives that make the marble shine, that fill the goblets, that open and close the heavy doors of power. The emperor's hand lifts, and hundreds move in response, though few will ever be thanked or remembered. Now imagine walking through one of those torchlit corridors yourself. The floor is cool beneath your feet, veined with ancient cracks. Ahead, 2 guards stand motionless beside a bronze door, their shadows stretching long behind them. Somewhere beyond that door, laughter fades into a sob. Then quiet. This is the Palace of Whispers, a place where power glitters on the surface but rots at its core. Every act of kindness hides calculation, every act of cruelty masks fear. The emperor's eyes are everywhere, even when closed. Yet for all his paranoia, Caligula is lonely. He paces the halls long after midnight, barefoot, whispering to the statues of his ancestors. Some say he asks them for guidance. Others say he asks them for forgiveness. The statues never answer, but their stony gaze follows him, unblinking, as he disappears into shadow. Down in the servants' passage, the girl folding linens blows out her candle. Another day survived. Another night nearly over. She dreams, not of escape, for that word no longer belongs to her, but of silence, the true kind, the kind that doesn't listen back. Above her, the torches sputter. The palace exhales, and for a brief moment, there is calm. But calm in Caligula's palace never lasts long. Morning returns to Rome not with peace, but with ritual. A horn sounds from the barracks below, and the palace awakens in layers, first the guards, then the servants, then the slaves. The sun climbs over the Tiber, gold and merciless, touching domes, statues, and rooftops like a hand claiming its own. Within the palace, everything is movement. Curtains drawn open. Floors swept. Trays prepared. The scent of warm bread and olive oil floats through the corridors, mixing with the faint smell of bronze polish and incense. Before the emperor opens his eyes, a dozen others have already been awake for hours, setting his world in order. There is no corner of Rome untouched by servitude. Slavery is not a secret shame, it is the foundation on which everything stands. A senator may speak of honor, a philosopher of virtue, but both are dressed, fed, and accompanied by people they own. The empire's grandeur rests on countless backs bent in quiet labor. To be Roman is to live with hierarchy, visible, constant, and absolute. In every household, from the poorest baker to the richest noble, there is someone who obeys and someone who commands. Freedom is not a birthright, but a fragile privilege, easily lost, easily sold. Inside the imperial household, slavery takes many forms. There are the familia urbana, domestic slaves who polish statues, carry messages, or pour the emperor's wine. There are the cubicularii, chamber slaves, often trusted with intimate duties, tending to the emperor's robes, his jewels, his moods. There are scribes and readers, singers and dancers, cooks and bath attendants. Each plays a part in the daily theater of empire. And then there are others, whose work is whispered about but never named. They live near the private chambers, unseen by senators or foreign guests. Their service is not written in ledgers or counted among spoils. For them, the palace is both workplace and prison, their lives spent fulfilling desires not their own. The Romans had a word for everything, service, ancilla, pure, famulus, but not for this kind of servitude. It existed in the spaces between definitions, in the silences between orders. It was part of life, as normal as bread and wine. A philosopher might write that even slaves possess souls. But in practice, the soul had no legal standing. Under Roman law, a slave was property, something that could be bought, punished, or discarded at will. A kind master was praised not for justice, but for mercy. The concept of equality was still centuries away, buried deep beneath layers of marble and myth. In the palace courtyard, a small group gathers near the fountain. They do not speak loudly, their voices are careful, respectful. One carries a tray of fruit, another a folded cloak. The youngest, a boy from Asia Minor, kneels to scrub the edge of a marble basin. His reflection trembles in the water. For a moment, he stares at it as though it belongs to someone else. Nearby, a scribe murmurs a list of morning appointments, ambassadors to receive, petitions to read, sacrifices to attend. Caligula's schedule changes with his mood, and his moods change with the weather. A good day means laughter, feasts, and sudden gifts. A bad day means silence, the kind that crushes the air. No one can predict which it will be. And so they work. The chamber slaves adjust his robes, careful not to meet his gaze. The attendants arrange the table, setting each cup and dish precisely where it should be. In Rome, order is safety. To make a mistake is to invite notice, and notice can end a life. By mid-morning, the palace hums again with the machinery of power. Messengers hurry through the halls, guards shift their weight, and servants refill lamps. Each person plays a role so precisely defined that even rebellion must happen in silence. Yet amid the hierarchy, strange intimacies grow. A master confides in a trusted attendant. A servant, seeing his lord drunk and alone, helps him to bed and whispers a prayer over him. In a world where no one is free, compassion itself becomes a kind of quiet rebellion. Still, every kindness exists within a chain. Even the emperor is bound by invisible links, expectations of the Senate, the weight of lineage, the hunger of the crowd. The difference is that his chains are gilded, adorned with jewels, disguised as glory. Outside, Rome bustles in the sunlight. Bakers call out, soldiers march, priests chant before temples. But within the palace, time feels slower, as though caught in amber. The same rooms, the same steps, the same cycle of labor and fear. And always the whispers. Some whisper for survival, small words passed between servants. He smiled today. He didn't finish his wine. Others whisper to remember who they are. In the quiet of their chambers, they speak their true names, the ones no Roman knows. They tell each other stories of home, of distant mountains and rivers, of mothers who sang the same lullabies centuries will later forget. Those stories, too, are acts of defiance. As the day stretches on, sunlight fills the halls, pooling like honey over marble. The emperor's laughter echoes briefly, then fades. Somewhere, a door closes. The sound of sandals on stone resumes its rhythm. Evening will come again soon. The torches will be lit. The same people who wake before dawn will still be working, unseen, when the moon rises over the Palatine. And so the empire turns, not on its emperors, but on those who never sleep. Night drifts down upon the Palatine hill like a velvet curtain. The hum of the city softens, the clatter of wheels fades, and the Roman sky deepens into an imperial shade of blue. Only the palace remains alive, a great, breathing organism of stone and whisper. In the candlelit corridors, shadows stretch long and trembling. Slaves move in silence, their footsteps softened by sandaled soles, their hands carrying trays of wine, basins of water, embroidered towels. The emperor's chambers are ahead, veiled behind carved doors of cedar and ivory. The air is perfumed with myrrh, the kind imported from Arabia, sweet, heavy, and expensive enough to feed a family for months. Here, the palace changes character. What was once public and ceremonial becomes hushed and secretive. The grand marble halls give way to smaller, darker rooms. Curtains hang where doors should be. The floors gleam like still water. Every gesture, every breath, feels deliberate, rehearsed, almost holy. This is where the emperor ceases to be divine and becomes human again, or something close to it. In Caligula's time, the emperor's private chambers were a theater of control. Everything within them existed for pleasure, yet everything within them also existed for power. To serve here was both a privilege and a curse. Those chosen were beautiful, silent, and utterly obedient. They were trained to understand desire not as feeling, but as command. Some had been taken as spoils of war, others gifted by senators hoping for favor. They came from Greece, Egypt, Syria, Gaul, the corners of a vast empire where Rome's shadow fell. Each was stripped of their name, and given a new one that pleased the court. In Rome, renaming was a form of rebirth, but for many, it felt like burial. Behind the silk screens, the flicker of torchlight casts moving shapes, glimpses of figures reclining, a hand reaching for a cup, a musician plucking a lyre. The sounds are soft but charged, a laugh, a sigh, the faint rustle of linen. There are no spectators here, yet everything feels performed. Caligula, the emperor god, delights in performance. He does not merely rule, he stages his rule. He turns power into a spectacle, and his palace into an amphitheater where he alone is audience and actor both. To him, beauty is not something to admire, it is something to possess. And possession, for Caligula, means control in its most complete form. The attendants understand this instinctively. They learn to read his moods as others might read the weather, the way his hand lingers on a goblet, the tilt of his head, the narrowing of his eyes. These are signs, warnings, forecasts. A wrong word, an unsteady hand, a glance held too long, any of these can end in punishment. And yet, there is fascination too. Those who serve closest to him see a man stripped of his marble mask, restless, unpredictable, but also strangely fragile. He speaks of dreams and omens, of voices that visit him at night, of gods who whisper through the walls. Sometimes he laughs until tears fall. Sometimes he falls into silence that lasts until dawn. The palace learns to breathe with him. One evening, as the moonlight filters through the high windows, a girl from Thessaly is brought before him. Her hair is bound in gold thread. Her eyes do not rise. The guards step aside, and she kneels. Caligula watches her for a long time without speaking. "Do you fear me?" he asks finally. She does not answer. The question is not meant for truth, but for music, the melody of fear, the sound of obedience. He smiles. Good. The attendants understand their roles. Some pour wine. Some play soft music. Others fade into the background, becoming part of the furniture, unseen and indispensable. The emperor rises, gestures toward the girl, and the performance resumes. Outside, Rome sleeps under the watch of its 1,000 gods. Inside, another kind of religion unfolds, one not of prayer, but of dominance. The palace walls have heard it all before. They keep their secrets, absorbing every sound, every breath, every name never spoken aloud. Near the far end of the chamber, a slave waits with a jug of water. His eyes flicker once toward the doorway, as though counting steps. It is not rebellion that stirs in him, only memory, the quiet ache of a life once lived beyond these marble walls. He wonders if the stars outside still look the same over his home. A sudden noise breaks the stillness. The emperor laughs, sharp, delighted, unpredictable. The others join in, because silence can be dangerous. And so the night continues, filled with wine, music, and the fragile dance between cruelty and affection. Somewhere in the palace, another door opens. A guard changes post. A servant whispers a prayer to no god in particular. The empire turns once more in its sleep. The scent of myrrh lingers long after the torches fade. Dawn rises slowly over the Palatine Hill, washing the palace in pale gold. The city below stirs, but the emperor's chambers remain hushed. In this quiet, the intricate performance of power begins once more. Caligula wears a mask of his own making. To the Senate, he is divine. To Rome, he is emperor. To the few closest to him, he is a tempest, shifting between charm and fury in the span of a heartbeat. The mask is his greatest tool, and the palace is its stage. Every gesture is measured. A glance can reward or punish. A smile can save or destroy. And those who serve him learn this quickly, for their lives depend on understanding the unspoken rules. Every step is an act, every word a potential hazard. The attendants and slaves closest to the emperor are trained to read these subtleties. They learn to anticipate moods, to move before orders are given, to vanish when their presence is not wanted. The palace is a choreography, and the dancers are many, though none are named. Caligula delights in contradictions. He can be generous, offering lavish gifts to those who please him, yet cruel in ways that make the generous gestures feel fragile. He feasts and gives, laughs and punishes, often within the same hour. The mask he wears is not a costume, it is a living part of him, merging control, desire, and spectacle. Those who serve closest to him witness the duality of power, the ruler as God, and the ruler as man. They see exhaustion hidden beneath regal robes, the loneliness behind triumph, and the trembling fragility beneath his imperious smile. Beauty in this palace carries a price. The young, the gifted, the obedient, all are drawn into the orbit of his will. Their worth is measured by their ability to maintain composure, to anticipate desire, to perform obedience flawlessly. One misstep can mean reprimand. One hesitation can mean exile, or worse. Yet the mask is not only for the eyes of others. It is for Caligula himself, a shield against the weight of expectation. Behind it, he hides uncertainty, fear, and a longing for connection he cannot express. The palace becomes both protector and prison, its walls absorbing the brilliance and darkness of his presence. Outside, Rome goes about its daily rhythm. Markets bustle. Senators debate. Soldiers march. But within the private chambers, time bends differently. Minutes stretch into hours. The sounds of the city fade into the background, leaving only the soft shuffle of sandals, the rustle of silk, the careful, measured breathing of those who serve. And in these moments, it becomes clear that the emperor's power is inseparable from those who sustain it. Every gesture, every command, every act of obedience reinforces the delicate balance of the palace. The mask cannot function without witnesses, the empire cannot endure without servants. A candle flickers on a marble ledge. Shadows dance across the walls. The attendants move silently, tending to the emperor's needs while preserving the secrecy of their own lives. Outside, the sun climbs higher, but inside, the palace exists in a world apart, timeless, relentless, and quietly cruel. It is here, in the interplay of beauty, fear, and obedience, that the true nature of the emperor's power becomes visible. Not in armies, not in laws, not in gold, but in the measured breaths and careful steps of those who keep the palace alive. And as the day stretches forward, the mask remains. It never falters, it never sleeps. And those who serve learn slowly that the palace will always demand more than the body can give, more than the heart can endure, and yet they continue, for survival, for routine, or for the faintest hope that one day, the mask might crack, and the world will finally be silent. The palace of Caligula is alive with secrets. Every corridor, every staircase, every chamber carries the weight of voices that cannot speak openly. By day, the corridors are filled with the clatter of sandals, the shuffle of robes, the murmur of servants obeying routine. But by night, whispers travel faster than any courier, slipping through keyholes, brushing past torches, curling around the ears of those who listen carefully. Rumors are the invisible threads that weave the life of the palace. They move silently, sometimes harmless, sometimes deadly. One word can spread from the kitchen to the chamber, from a servant to a guard, from a favorite to the emperor himself, and back again in a loop of expectation and fear. A whisper can become law as swiftly as a decree. A glance can speak louder than a proclamation. Imagine a hallway just before dawn. The air is thick with incense, and the faint scent of oil from polishing torches lingers. Two young attendants pass each other quietly, exchanging a word in a soft language no one else understands. Perhaps it is a warning. Perhaps it is news. One nods and hurries on, carrying it to the next person. By the time the sun rises, the entire household knows, though no one has ever spoken it aloud in public. Among the slaves, stories of the emperor circulate like fragile fireflies. Some recount acts of generosity, gifts handed with a smile. Others speak in hushed tones of the sudden rage, the sharp reprimands, the punishments that appear without notice. These stories are their survival, their way of preparing for a day in which predictability is impossible. The senators and courtiers are not immune. Though they walk in the sunlit halls with titles and robes, whispers find them too. They speak of the emperor's moods, of unusual favors or suspicions. Rumors are currency. They buy safety, prestige, or influence. But misjudged, they can cost life or honor. One must navigate them with precision, like stepping on marble tiles slick with dew. The sources of these whispers are many. A servant who glimpses the emperor's hand trembling, a chamber guard who hears a hushed command, a musician who notes a sudden pause in a tune, each observation is folded into rumor. Some are exaggerated, others understated. Each is amplified by fear. The palace walls, if they could speak, would tell tales of every lie believed, every secret shared, every caution whispered just in time. Even in private, whispers continue. Behind silk curtains, attendants share what cannot be written. They speak of nights when the emperor paced alone, muttering to himself. Of laughter that masks terror. Of moments when a command seems gentle, yet carries hidden meaning. These stories are rehearsed endlessly in their minds, for to forget is dangerous, to misremember potentially fatal. In the quiet corners, a young slave records the movement of the emperor like a slow, secret calendar. Every gesture, every sigh, every glance is noted, memorized. He cannot speak openly, yet he keeps the memory alive. Some say these notes will survive him, that long after the palace empties, the whispers will remain, etched in silent ink. Outside the chambers, torches gutter in their brackets. Shadows move over frescoed walls. The palace seems still, yet it is never truly at rest. Whispers fill the void, filling empty corridors with stories, cautionary tales, and half-truths. They carry the knowledge of what is safe to say, and what is better left unspoken. And so the palace breathes, not just in marble and fire, but in whispers. They are the lifeblood of those who serve, the unseen fabric of empire. They remind every occupant that control is never absolute, that power is a fragile balance, and that survival depends on understanding both the spoken and the unspoken. By the end of the night, the whispers have traveled far, touching every door, every shadowed corner, every heart that beats in service to the emperor. Morning will bring light, but the echoes of rumor remain, etched like patterns on the marble floors, guiding every step for those who walk within the palace walls. To walk the marble halls of Caligula's palace is to walk in shadows. But to truly understand its rhythm, one must follow the steps of those who are rarely noticed. The attendants, the chamber slaves, the household servants, they are the unseen pulse of the empire, moving with a precision that protects both themselves and the world around them. Imagine a young servant, perhaps no older than 16, born far from Rome, in a distant province now swallowed by the empire's reach. She is carried to the palace as a child, renamed, trained, and folded into its endless rhythm. Her mornings begin before the sun touches the Tiber, her hands already busy polishing bronze, filling basins, arranging trays of figs and wine. Each movement is careful, rehearsed, deliberate. Mistakes are not permitted, the cost is never spoken aloud, but it is understood. Her world is measured in hours dictated by others. She eats when allowed, sleeps when commanded, speaks when necessary. Yet even in obedience, there is strategy. Every glance, every gesture is weighed. She must anticipate moods, predict desires, and vanish when she is not needed. The palace is a stage, and she is both dancer and shadow, her life defined by silence. Through her eyes, the emperor is both godlike and terrifyingly human. She watches him pace the private chambers, his robes trailing like whispers, his hands restless, his laughter unpredictable. She sees the fleeting moments of kindness, the sudden flashes of cruelty, and the strange vulnerability hidden beneath his gilded mask. And she knows that her survival depends on observing all of it, yet revealing none. Her fellow slaves speak in hushed tones, forming a secret language within the walls. They share warnings, small comforts, snippets of news from the outer world, memories of homes they may never return to. They dream quietly of rivers and fields, of songs sung under open skies, of families whose faces haunt their sleep. These thoughts are forbidden luxuries, tucked away behind smiles and bent backs. Life in the palace is a mixture of monotony and terror. Long hours are filled with repetitive tasks, sweeping, polishing, carrying. And yet each task is shadowed by possibility, the emperor's sudden favor or ire, a command given in jest but executed with precision, a small error magnified into scandal. To endure is an art, one honed daily in silence. The young servant moves through chambers where others have fallen, where whispers linger like ghosts. She learns quickly to read the walls themselves, the placement of torches, the faint draft that indicates an open door, the distant murmur of laughter or sobs. In this palace, every detail is a clue, every absence a warning. And yet, even within the strictures of obedience, moments of quiet humanity persist. She shares water with another servant, offers a reassuring glance to a trembling comrade, whispers a brief prayer for herself. In these gestures, fleeting and unrecorded, she preserves a fragment of her own life, the part that still belongs to her, however small. Her perspective reveals the true machinery of the empire. The emperor's power, vast and terrifying, is made possible by the hands, hearts, and feet of those who serve him unseen. Without their vigilance, without their silence, the palace could not function, and the empire's illusion of perfection would shatter. At night she lies on a thin mat in the servant quarters, listening to the distant torches gutter in the corridors above. She dreams not of rebellion, but of endurance. Of survival measured in small victories, a day completed without punishment, a whispered story shared, a moment of beauty observed. She knows the palace watches her as much as she watches it. And in this quiet reflection, the truth becomes clear. The history of Rome, of emperors and glory, is incomplete without the memory of those who moved in shadows, who carried the empire's burdens silently, who lived in a world that is almost always ignored. The palace is vast, but within it, every life, no matter how unseen, matters. Each breath, each careful step, is a testament to endurance. And when dawn arrives once more, the young servant rises, ready to move again, carrying the weight of the empire in her hands and heart. The sun rises higher over Rome, gilding the city in its unyielding light. Beyond the marble walls of the Palatine Palace, the empire hums with life, commerce, and power, but also with a more somber rhythm, the quiet, unrelenting pulse of slavery. The palace is only one part of a vast network, a single node in the empire's economy of bodies. In markets and courtyards, in homes both grand and modest, in temples where offerings are whispered into God's ears, the lives of the enslaved are both currency and labor. Their presence is invisible to some, their utility unquestioned, their autonomy denied. The empire, magnificent in architecture and ceremony, depends on them as it depends on stone and water. Slaves arrive in Rome from every corner of the known world. Captured in war, sold by families struggling to survive, or gifted as tokens of favor and alliance, they are transported along roads, rivers, and seas, folded into the machinery of conquest. Each is catalogued, assessed, and given a role according to skills, appearance, or status. The market is not a place of kindness but of efficiency, of calculation and cold appraisal. In this economy, bodies are property, but they are not merely laborers. Some are trained as artisans, scribes, or musicians, their talents adding value to their existence in the eyes of their owners. Others are relegated to domestic service, tending kitchens, stoking fires, scrubbing floors, or polishing bronze and marble until it gleams like liquid gold. Some serve as teachers or secretaries. Others, invisible in their suffering, serve roles that history rarely names aloud. The palace, with its marble and torchlight, depends on these unseen lives. Every tray of figs, every poured goblet, every embroidered robe, every polished statue is a testament to careful hands, eyes trained to anticipate need, and hearts that endure quiet fear. Outside, the marketplace mirrors this system on a broader scale. Enslaved people are bought, sold, and gifted. Their lives are quantified like coins, their worth calculated in terms of youth, beauty, skill, and obedience. The trade is both literal and symbolic. Gifted slaves serve as tokens of allegiance, proof of loyalty between powerful families or provinces. They are exchanged in whispers as much as in contracts, carrying influence and prestige as silently as they carry water or letters through palace corridors. Each movement of a body within this economy reinforces the broader structure of power: those who own, those who command, and those who obey. And yet, within this system, there is nuance, shades of human resilience. Some slaves develop influence, earning favor through intelligence, charm, or subtle strategy. Others forge bonds of solidarity, sharing information, offering comfort, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. In these small, hidden ways, they reclaim fragments of their humanity, asserting identity where it has been denied. The economy of bodies is not confined to physical labor alone. It extends to intimacy, a shadowy domain rarely recorded in the annals of history. Desire, obedience, and control intersect here, often blurred by fear and power. Some slaves are compelled to serve not just with hands but with presence, becoming part of rituals and routines that are both private and political. This intersection of body and authority underscores a harsh truth. In Rome, power is exercised through control over life itself. Despite its brutality, this system is meticulously organized. Records are kept, inventories maintained, and punishments meted out with precision. The city depends on it. Wealthy families, merchants, and even the temples rely on enslaved labor to sustain their lives and their influence. Without it, the illusion of Rome's perfection, its art, its luxury, its grandeur, would crumble. For the enslaved, the work is ceaseless. Dawn yields to dusk, and dusk yields again to dawn. Survival depends on attentiveness, discretion, and the ability to vanish when noticed too much. Stories pass in whispers, lessons learned from those who came before. Some dreams are quietly preserved, others crushed in silence. Each day is a balance between endurance and invisibility. And in the palace, all this converges. The emperor receives the fruits of an empire built on the backs of those who cannot refuse, whose lives are measured in obedience and labor. His every luxury, every ceremonial act, every moment of pleasure, is a reminder of the lives sustained and shaped by the economy of bodies. Without them, Rome itself could not function. As the sun sets and shadows lengthen once more, one realizes that the grandeur of the empire rests not merely on conquest or coin, but on the quiet, tireless work of those whose names are never spoken. The economy of bodies is invisible to most, yet it is the foundation of everything. Every corridor in the palace, every market street in Rome, every temple and courtyard echoes with the footsteps of those who keep the empire alive in silence. And so night returns, folding the city into quiet once more, as the cycle continues. The bodies move, the empire thrives, and the palace waits, patient and eternal, for another day of labor and whispered obedience. Rome thrives on grandeur. Its streets echo with triumphs, its forums buzz with rhetoric, and its temples gleam in devotion. Yet the empire's true power is revealed not just in laws or armies, but in the spectacle of obedience and subjugation, staged daily for both citizen and captive. Caligula understood this. He turned display into a tool, a way to reinforce his authority and remind everyone, even in the whispering shadows, who held dominion. In the palace, every meal can become theater. A lavish banquet is more than nourishment, it is a demonstration of status and control. Guests are positioned precisely, their reactions measured. Music swells at intervals, laughter is encouraged, and small favors or punishments are doled out in ways that leave the room trembling with uncertainty. To witness is to participate, whether one is a senator, a courtier, or a servant carrying trays. The games in the arena are similar in their mechanics. Public spectacles, chariots racing, gladiators clashing, animals hunted, reflect the rhythm of command and the inevitability of hierarchy. The emperor sits above all, his gaze the invisible law, his whims shaping life and death alike. These performances teach obedience not through philosophy or law, but through the compelling, inescapable experience of power enacted in front of the masses. Within the palace, however, the spectacles are more private and intimate, yet no less influential. Slaves are trained, selected, and displayed according to aesthetic and social expectations. Some are musicians, dancers, or performers in private ceremonies. Others are drawn into the emperor's more personal entertainments, where presence itself becomes labor. Every gesture, every measured movement, is a performance with consequences. Imagine the corridors of the Palatine during one of these evenings. Torches flicker along the walls, throwing long shadows over marble floors. A young attendant enters carrying a golden platter. Her eyes flick toward the emperor, gauging his mood. He smiles faintly, a sign to continue, and she steps forward with precise grace. Another servant waits with a pitcher of wine, ready to pour at the exact moment required. Every motion is choreography. Every hesitation carries risk. The spectacle is not merely for the amusement of the powerful. It serves a subtle, coercive purpose, to remind those present, both high and low, that every act of visibility can be a form of accountability. Observers learn to read the language of approval and disfavor. To participate is to navigate a constant negotiation of favor and survival. Outside the palace, the principle is the same. Slaves in marketplaces, workshops, and temples operate under the constant gaze of owners, patrons, and the public. Their obedience becomes performance. The empire teaches lessons in submission through these displays, so that power remains visible even to those who cannot witness it directly. And yet, within this spectacle, human resilience persists. Some slaves learn to turn attention into protection, obedience into influence. They memorize patterns of preference, anticipate moods, and occasionally, in subtle ways, bend circumstance to preserve themselves or assist others. The very stage designed to enforce subjugation becomes a space where survival strategies unfold, quiet and unnoticed. In the private chambers, Caligula's pleasures are both grand and cruel. He uses beauty, fear, and obedience to shape his environment. Servants, musicians, and attendants are actors in this relentless drama, their every movement scrutinized, their every breath accounted for. A misstep can be punished, a perfect performance can be rewarded. In all cases, the power dynamic is reinforced. Spectacle and subjugation are inseparable. The visible display teaches those who watch about hierarchy. The invisible pressure ensures that the lessons are internalized. It is a method of control so complete that it extends even to those who believe themselves free. Everyone becomes part of the theater, whether by choice or necessity. By nightfall, the palace is quiet again, yet the echoes of performance linger in its halls. Torches flicker, marble glows faintly, and the people who moved, danced, or served during the day lie down to rest, knowing the rhythm will resume. The emperor sleeps, but only briefly. And when he rises, the spectacle begins anew. In this endless cycle, power is demonstrated, reinforced, and internalized. It is both magnificent and terrifying. And at the center of it all, the slaves and attendants, unseen, yet indispensable, continue their careful steps, navigating a world where survival depends on the flawless execution of obedience and awareness. In the palace of Caligula, fear is more than emotion, it is a constant presence, a companion to every breath, every gesture, every step. It lives in corridors, chambers, and stairwells, shaping behavior with an invisible hand. Those who serve learn quickly, survival depends not on strength, but on perception, timing, and the delicate art of reading moods. The emperor's temper is unpredictable. One day he smiles, lavishes gifts, and praises obedience. The next, a glance or a misstep can summon wrath that seems disproportionate, almost ritualistic. In these moments, fear becomes both shield and guide. To anticipate it is to navigate the palace safely, to ignore it is to risk oblivion. Slaves and attendants develop a language of subtlety. A bow held too long might imply defiance. One too short may signal disrespect. Hands tremble as they pour wine, straighten robes, or adjust the emperor's cushions. Eyes flit toward torches, doors, and the shadows beyond, measuring what is safe to observe and what is best ignored. Every action carries meaning. Every silence, a potential warning. Fear is both communal and isolating. Whispered warnings pass between servants. He is displeased with the last reading. Do not enter the chambers until called. These fragments of information are lifelines, enabling survival in an environment where control is absolute. Yet even as they share knowledge, each individual carries a private, constant awareness of danger, a personal vigilance that never sleeps. In private quarters, fear takes a more intimate form. Attendants anticipate desires that may not be spoken aloud. They navigate proximity and distance with precision, balancing service with discretion. A moment of inattentiveness can be catastrophic, a hesitation interpreted as defiance. Here, fear becomes second nature, inseparable from routine. The shadows themselves seem alive. A flicker of candlelight can conceal or expose. Corridors echo with imagined steps, and every door could hide a sudden judgment. Fear sharpens senses, accelerates thought, and enforces obedience without the need for constant supervision. It is both tool and teacher, shaping behavior more effectively than chains or punishment alone. Even the emperor is bound by fear, though of different kinds. He fears betrayal, the collapse of influence, and the unpredictable currents of fortune. His actions, while dictatorial, are also reactions to perceived threats. In this palace, power and fear are intertwined. One reinforces the other, creating a hierarchy that extends from emperor to slave, from guard to messenger. Yet fear also fosters subtle resistance. A glance exchanged between servants can signal warning or solidarity. A careful gesture can save a life or preserve dignity. In the spaces between commands, in the silences of corridors, small acts of autonomy emerge, like whispered rebellion. They are quiet, measured, and fleeting, but they exist. Throughout the day, the palace breathes with tension. Servants move with careful rhythm. Guards patrol with precision. Even the air seems thick with anticipation, carrying the unspoken understanding that any lapse can ripple into catastrophe. Fear is not merely a tool of control, it is woven into the very architecture of the place, shaping how all who dwell within it perceive the world. Nightfall brings little reprieve. Shadows lengthen, torches flicker, and those who serve remain vigilant. Even rest is tempered by caution, as dreams may carry warnings, and the first movement of dawn will demand full attentiveness. The cycle is endless. Fear is ceaseless. And yet, within this weight, life persists. Survival depends on mastering fear, transforming it from paralyzing force into guidance. The palace, in all its opulence, is as much a school of endurance as it is a monument to power. Every day lived is a triumph, every careful step forward a testament to resilience in a world dominated by the shadow of authority. In Caligula's palace, power is not merely held, it circulates. It flows along invisible channels, moving through whispers, favors, and knowledge. Every act, no matter how small, carries significance. The emperor may seem omnipotent, yet even he is bound by the intricate web spun by those who serve him, observe him, and understand the fragile balance of influence within the walls. At the center, of course, is the emperor himself. His word is law, his whim is command, and his favor determines destiny. Yet even he relies on intermediaries, trusted attendants, chamber slaves, scribes, and guards, who translate desire into action, who anticipate needs, who manage perception. Without them, the grandeur of the palace would crumble. In this sense, the web of influence is reciprocal. It gives and takes, sustains and controls. For the servants, influence is subtle, almost imperceptible. A timely warning, a careful word, a discreet gesture can earn protection, favor, or a reprieve. These acts are never acknowledged publicly, but they ripple through the household, strengthening networks that can mean survival in a world where visibility can be dangerous. Each node in the web is carefully maintained, its threads invisible but essential. Consider a chamber slave who notices a shift in the emperor's mood. Perhaps a hand trembles over a goblet, or a laugh is delayed. The slave signals another, who informs a guard, who adjusts the schedule of attendance. In this small chain, influence travels quietly, shaping the palace's rhythm without a single overt command. The emperor may never know that a warning has traveled through these silent channels, yet his environment is subtly controlled because of it. Outside the immediate circle, influence extends further. Courtiers and senators, though distant from daily service, observe and participate in the flow. They present gifts, convey rumors, or offer counsel, each action weaving into the network of favor that determines who thrives and who falters. Even the seemingly powerless can carry a thread of authority, provided they understand the rules of connection and discretion. The web is maintained through observation, patience, and memory. To survive, one must recall who observes whom, who carries what knowledge, and who acts in the shadows. Errors can sever threads, exposing individuals to danger. Accuracy, discretion, and timing are everything. Among the slaves, subtle alliances form. A favored servant may shield another, a chamber attendant may signal danger to a comrade. These networks are informal, unrecorded, yet profoundly important. They allow for the exercise of agency within confines of servitude, offering small measures of power in an environment dominated by the emperor's will. Influence is also reinforced by fear. Each act of favor or intervention carries risk. To misjudge intention, to overstep boundaries, is to invite punishment. Thus, the web functions as both support and restraint, linking individuals in a system that balances survival with the demands of obedience. Even within the palace hierarchy, some threads are stronger than others. A trusted attendant may advise the emperor subtly, shaping decisions without ever being recognized. A guard may influence which messages reach the chamber first. Knowledge of these subtleties is currency. Discretion is the coin. In the corridors, behind closed doors, the web hums quietly. Every glance, every whispered instruction, every careful step reinforces it. The palace itself is a map of influence. Each doorway, each staircase, each shadowed corner a node through which power flows. And yet, this web is fragile. A single misstep, a rumor misdirected, a favor misunderstood, a glance too long, can unravel connections. Survival depends on attentiveness, memory, and subtlety. The palace, magnificent and daunting, is navigated not only with hands and feet but with insight, perception, and careful negotiation of relationships invisible to outsiders. The lesson is clear: the emperor's power, for all its brilliance, is amplified and constrained by those who operate in shadows. The web of influence sustains the palace, the empire, and the illusion of omnipotence. Without it, even a ruler godlike in ambition would be adrift in marble halls, vulnerable to the smallest ripple of human agency. In the quiet of the night, servants lie awake, thinking of the threads they touch, the channels they navigate, and the power they carry unseen. Every day, they move through the web, balancing obedience, survival, and subtle assertion of will, a delicate, invisible dance that shapes the life of the palace as much as the emperor's own hand. The palace is magnificent, filled with marble, gold, and the scent of incense, yet beneath its beauty lies a world governed by control, obedience, and fear. Punishment in Caligula's palace is rarely public. It is a private language, understood by those who serve closely, executed with precision, and felt deeply by those who endure it. Every action, every hesitation, every misstep carries the potential for reprimand. A servant who spills wine, a chamber slave who forgets a step in ritual, a musician who hesitates mid-note, these are not mere mistakes. They are breaches of a fragile order, invitations for the emperor's attention. Punishment is not always loud, it is often psychological, a weight that presses invisibly on every gesture, every breath. A slave may be summoned quietly to the emperor's private chambers. The doors close, torches flicker, and the room fills with an intense, silent tension. No one else is present. The punishment is personal, tailored to teach obedience through fear and reflection. It can be a sharp reprimand, a denial of favor, or more severe physical measures. The goal is always the same: to ensure the lesson endures long after the act itself is over. Even when punishment is delivered by proxy, a guard, a trusted attendant, it carries the same weight. The chains may be invisible, the scars may never be seen, yet the memory lasts. Servants learn to anticipate danger, to read signs in the smallest of gestures, a twitch in the emperor's eye, a sudden tightening of his lips, the subtle shift of a hand toward a torch or instrument. Psychological punishment is perhaps the most insidious. Fear, humiliation, and uncertainty are used as tools, ensuring that the individual internalizes control. A chamber slave might be ordered to witness the favor given to another, understanding by contrast what disobedience costs. A musician might be asked to play until exhaustion, feeling the quiet pressure of expectation and the subtle threat of displeasure. Punishment in the palace is rarely absolute, it is a spectrum. Some endure brief reprimands and recover quickly, their position strengthened by careful recovery. Others falter, misjudging the subtle rules of behavior, and pay a higher cost. The lessons are never formally recorded, they are absorbed, memorized, and carried silently by those who survive to navigate another day. Even among those who wield power within the palace, fear governs action. guards enforcing rules, attendants passing commands, scribes delivering messages. They all operate under the weight of expectation. Punishment is a chain that connects the emperor to every corner of the household, binding obedience through visibility, anticipation, and consequence. The lessons are often reinforced through ritual. Daily tasks, ceremonies, and even casual interactions are monitored carefully. Each failure, each error, becomes a microcosm of the palace's strict hierarchy. In this way, punishment is not a singular act but a continuous thread, woven through routine, observation, and the unspoken rules of the household. Yet even within this system of fear, resilience persists. Some slaves endure, learning to navigate the intricacies of expectation and survival. They adapt, observe, and anticipate. Small acts of ingenuity, adjusting a gesture, anticipating a need, avoiding an exposed position, allow them to endure punishment's weight and continue their service. These acts, though quiet, are triumphs of human resourcefulness in a world dominated by control. The shadow of punishment extends beyond the moment of reprimand. It informs every choice, every action, every interaction. It ensures that the palace operates with precision, that obedience is maintained without constant supervision, and that the emperor's presence, even when absent, is always felt. And so, life continues in the palace. The corridors gleam, the torches flicker, the attendants move with care, and the lessons of punishment, both subtle and explicit, ripple through the household. Fear is never idle. It is a constant companion, shaping every step, every glance, every breath in the quiet, relentless rhythm of palace life. Favor in Caligula's palace is both coveted and dangerous. It is the currency of survival, the invisible thread that can elevate a servant, attendant, or chamber slave above the ordinary, granting access, protection, or privileges otherwise denied. Yet it is fragile, shifting with the emperor's whims, as unpredictable as the flicker of a torch in the corridor. To receive favor is to understand the subtle language of the palace. A glance, a carefully timed gesture, a whispered observation can mark a servant for attention, anointing them temporarily with the emperor's approval. The reward is more than comfort, it is safety. Yet it is conditional, dependent on constant vigilance and flawless performance. One misstep, one lapse, can erase favor as swiftly as it was granted. Servants who experience favor are acutely aware of its impermanence. They move cautiously, never fully relaxed, aware that their position depends on maintaining the delicate equilibrium between obedience and insight. Those who fail to recognize the shifting winds find themselves quickly isolated, subject to reprimand, or swept aside to make way for another who understands the rules more keenly. Favor is often strategic. The emperor distributes attention to manipulate, to reward loyalty, or to observe reactions. A chamber slave may be allowed to prepare the emperor's private meals or accompany him to a garden terrace, not solely as reward but to gauge temperament, obedience, and intelligence. Each opportunity carries lessons in diplomacy, subtlety, and restraint. Even within the hierarchy of slaves and attendants, favor shapes social dynamics. Those granted it may gain informal authority over peers, receiving small privileges or access to information. Others, jealous or cautious, observe these dynamics carefully, learning how to navigate competition without provoking resentment or suspicion. The web of influence stretches outward from favor, linking everyone in a delicate balance of observation, ambition, and caution. The fragility of favor becomes starkly clear in moments of imperial caprice. A smile may vanish, a look may harden, and all that once seemed secure dissolves. Servants are left to reconstruct stability, repairing relationships, adapting behavior, and anticipating what actions may restore trust or appease displeasure. The skill lies in subtlety. Too obvious a pursuit of favor invites scrutiny. Too passive an approach risks invisibility. This precariousness ensures that the palace remains a place of constant vigilance. No one acts freely, all movements are measured, every word calculated. Favor, while desirable, reinforces obedience. It reminds every servant that power is granted temporarily, held lightly, and withdrawn without warning. Yet favor also creates opportunity. It can be a shield in moments of danger, a bridge to greater understanding, a chance to observe and learn from the emperor's mind. Those who navigate it successfully gain not only protection but insight, discovering patterns and rhythms that allow them to survive, and sometimes even thrive, within the confines of the palace. The most adept attendants learn to blend patience with attentiveness, subtlety with courage. They observe, memorize, and anticipate. They understand that favor is not a possession but a fleeting alignment, a window of opportunity that can guide their actions and shape their survival. Outside, the emperor's gaze is omnipresent yet selective. He chooses moments to engage, moments to withdraw, moments to observe from afar. Servants and attendants live within this oscillation, reading signs with precision, balancing ambition with discretion, always aware that their position is as delicate as it is vital. And so the palace continues its rhythm, the marble corridors gleam, the torches flicker, and the lives within move with a careful choreography of attention, caution, and adaptability. Favor is both reward and reminder, a fragile yet essential element in the endless dance of survival beneath the emperor's watchful eyes. In the palace of Caligula, secrets are as essential as marble and torchlight. They move unseen through corridors, hidden in whispers, tucked into gestures, and carried in the memory of those who serve. Knowledge here is not simply power, it is survival. Those who understand what must remain unspoken navigate the palace with care, while those who fail often disappear into obscurity or punishment. Every servant learns the language of secrecy. A glance, a cough, a pause in movement can communicate volumes without uttering a word. Knowledge is carefully distributed, passed only to those who have demonstrated trust, discretion, and the capacity to act without drawing attention. Each secret is a thread in the intricate tapestry of palace life, binding individuals together and controlling behavior. Some secrets are practical: the timing of the emperor's rituals, the hidden passages between chambers, the precise preferences of those in power. Others are more personal: whispered fears, forbidden relationships, alliances formed in shadowed corners. All carry weight. The bearer of a secret is entrusted with responsibility, and failure can be catastrophic. For a chamber slave, the ability to carry a secret silently is a form of quiet power. It allows influence without visibility, protection without exposure. They witness moments of vulnerability in the emperor or his inner circle, moments that must never be spoken beyond the intended ears. The knowledge of these moments grants perspective, a subtle understanding of the human complexities behind the facade of authority. Yet silence is not merely protective, it is a form of communication. Observant servants exchange information without words, conveying warnings, opportunities, or intentions through gesture, glance, or action. The palace thrives on this network of unspoken knowledge, where awareness and discretion are more valuable than obedience alone. Even mistakes in secrecy are dangerous. Misinterpreted intentions, overheard words, or a misjudged glance can unravel careers or lives. The palace operates as a finely tuned machine, and secrets are the oil that keeps it functioning smoothly. Those who understand this find themselves indispensable. Those who do not quickly vanish into obscurity or punishment. Secrets also preserve hope. Within the confines of power and fear, small moments of autonomy, personal reflection, or discreet assistance are hidden in plain sight. A servant may shield another, carry food, or convey messages of comfort, all unseen, all dangerous if discovered. These quiet acts are the lifeblood of resilience, tiny rebellions in a world dominated by authority. The web of secrets extends outward, touching everyone from the highest courtiers to the lowest servant. Knowledge flows along invisible channels, connecting, protecting, and sometimes betraying. Those who navigate it well survive, those who ignore it fail. The emperor's favor, the shadow of punishment, and the careful management of visibility all intertwine with these silent truths, forming the rhythm of life in the palace. Even the architecture of the palace facilitates secrecy. Hidden corridors, private chambers, and isolated stairwells create spaces where whispered warnings, furtive gestures, and careful observations thrive. The marble itself seems to hold the memory of conversations never spoken aloud, each wall a silent witness to the strategies, fears, and ambitions of those who move within it. By night, the palace becomes a repository of these silent truths. Servants lie awake, recalling instructions, warnings, and observations. They memorize gestures, anticipate moods, and keep the delicate balance between obedience and survival. Knowledge, carried in silence, is as vital as breath, and as dangerous as fire. And so the palace endures, sustained not only by wealth and authority, but by the invisible currents of secrets, quietly shaping every action, every decision, every life within its walls. Those who can carry them navigate the labyrinth of power with subtle mastery. Those who cannot are swallowed by it. In the palace of Caligula, time stretches in marble corridors, candlelit halls, and shadowed stairways. Beyond the grandeur and terror, beyond fear, favor, and secrecy, lies the persistent weight of memory. Every life lived within these walls carries the imprint of countless small actions, whispered lessons, and endured hardships. Memory preserves not only the past but the quiet strategies of survival that define the present. For the slaves and attendants, memory is a shield. They recall instructions, gestures, moods, and rituals with precision. The slightest lapse can be fatal, so every detail is imprinted in the mind. They memorize the placement of torches, the rhythm of footsteps, the timing of rituals, and the signs of anger or approval in the emperor's gaze. Memory allows them to navigate the fragile balance between obedience and survival. Yet memory is also a burden. It holds the weight of fear, punishment, and loss. Every reprimand, every moment of humiliation, every whisper of danger is etched deeply. Memories of vanished comrades, of lives extinguished quietly, linger like shadows along corridors. They remind the living that endurance is both fragile and essential, that survival requires constant vigilance. Even the emperor's actions leave traces in memory. Attendants and slaves carry forward the impressions of caprice, generosity, cruelty, and whimsy. These recollections shape behavior, inform strategy, and guide anticipation. Memory becomes a map, a compass, and a warning, all in one. It preserves the rhythm of the palace, ensuring that lessons learned in the past inform every step taken in the present. Memory also preserves subtle triumphs. Acts of discretion, small victories in survival, moments of solidarity between servants. These are remembered as quietly as punishments. They are the threads of resilience woven into the fabric of life in the palace. In these recollections, human agency persists, flickering like torchlight against marble walls. Time itself is marked by memory. The repetitive cycle of labor, observation, and vigilance transforms days into patterns. The young become experienced, the inexperienced learn swiftly or fade. Memory encodes the invisible rules, the nuances of power, and the rhythms that define every life within the palace. It is both guide and record, a testament to endurance in a world dominated by authority. The emperor's memory, too, shapes life within the palace. Decisions are informed by past events, gestures by previous displays of obedience, and moods by the recollection of perceived slights or satisfactions. The palace, in every sense, is a landscape defined by memory, shared, collective, and profoundly personal. For those who serve, memory offers both caution and hope. It reminds them of the dangers, yes, but also of the subtle strategies that have allowed them to endure. Each recollection becomes a tool, a way to navigate hierarchy, anticipate moods, and protect oneself and others. Memory preserves not only survival but the fragile remnants of dignity, identity, and human connection. As the days and nights fold into one another, memory becomes the silent companion of every action. It shapes the palace more profoundly than decrees or commands, more subtly than fear or favor. It is a record, a teacher, a map, and a warning all at once. And within its weight lies the quiet endurance of countless lives, the slaves who walked unseen, the attendants who carried secrets, and the emperor whose presence loomed over all. In the end, the palace survives not solely through wealth, authority, or spectacle, but through the memories carried by those who inhabit it. Each remembered glance, each recalled lesson, each silent act of resilience becomes part of the enduring story of life under Caligula. And though the marble may age, the torches may gutter, and the emperor may fall into history, the memory of those who lived, endured, and observed within these walls remains eternal, quiet, resilient, and unyielding.